Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're taking a plunge into the world of Chiroptera, bats.
Yeah, definitely one of the most, let's say, misunderstood groups of animals out there.
Absolutely. And when you think about it, when you picture a bat, what comes to mind? Probably something dark, maybe a bit spooky, hanging upside down.
Right, the classic cave image.
Exactly. But we're aiming to, well, completely reshape that image for you today. Because we're talking about the only mammals that truly mastered powered flight.
Not just gliding like some squirrels, but actual sustained flight. It's a massive evolutionary achievement.
It really is. And that name, Chiroptera, gives us a clue, doesn't it?
It does. Comes straight from ancient Greek. Chier for hand and oron for wing. Hand wing. It perfectly describes them.
So let's set the stage. Just how significant is this group in the grand scheme of mammals?
Oh, it's enormous. Second only to rodents in terms of species diversity. Think about that.
Second largest order.
That's incredible. It means bats make up roughly 20% of all classified mammal species on the planet. We're talking over 1,500 known species, and scientists are still finding more.
Wow. Okay, so huge diversity.
Yeah.
And that diversity plays out in their physical form too, right? The size difference is just staggering.
Completely staggering.
Yeah.
On one end, you've got Kitty's hog-nosed bat. You might know it as the bumblebee bat.
The bumblebee bat. How small are we talking?
Tiny. Barely an inch long, maybe 30 millimeters or so.
Ah.
And it weighs just 2 grams. It's one of the smallest mammals in existence.
2 grams.
Yeah.
You'd barely feel that in your hand.
You really couldn't. Now, jump to the other extreme. The giant golden-crowned flying fox.
Okay, that sounds impressive.
It is. This one can weigh up to 1.5 kilograms. That's over 3 pounds. And its wingspan.
Let me guess. Big.
Huge. Up to 1.6 meters. That's over 5 feet across.
5 feet. From a 2-gram bat to a 5-foot wingspan. That really drives home the incredible range within Chiroptera.
Exactly. And that range influences everything, their diet, how they navigate, and critically, how they manage this unique ability, flight, which is where we should probably start.
Right. Flight, the defining feature. They're the only mammals doing it, properly doing it. So how does a standard mammal arm become this high-performance wing? What's the secret sauce?
The secret is really in the hand and the membrane connecting it, the patagium. A bird's wing is feathers on fused bones, quite rigid.
Oh.
A bat's wing is, well, it's mostly hand. The finger bones are incredibly elongated.
Stretched right out.
Dramatically stretched out. They form the struts, the supports for that thin, elastic skin, the patagium.
And this isn't just random growth, is it? There's a specific genetic mechanism behind stretching those finger bones so much.
Precisely. It's down to the expression of certain genes, specifically bone morphogenetic proteins, or BMPs. During development, the BIC-MP2 gene signal is turned way up, but only in the forelimbs.
Not the hind leg.
Not the hind limbs.
Mm-hmm.
This targeted boost causes that extreme proportional elongation of the fingers needed for the wing structure.
A tiny genetic tweak with massive consequences.
Absolutely massive. And it's not just length. The bones themselves are adapted, they're flattened in cross-section, and they actually become less mineralized towards the fingertips.
Less mineralized, meaning more flexible.
Exactly. Flexibility without sacrificing essential strength. This lets the wing twist and camber, change its shape dynamically in flight.
Which must give them an edge over birds in terms of maneuverability.
Definitely. Bats are often much more agile than birds of a similar size. That flexible wing generates more lift with less drag compared to a stiffer, feathered wing. It's like having tiny adjustments possible all along the wing surface.
And there's more to the wing membrane itself, isn't there? It's not just passive skin.
Not at all. It's packed with specialized touch-sensitive receptors, Merkel cells.
Sensors in the wings. What do?
They provide real-time aerodynamic feedback. These cells detect tiny changes in airflow, in pressure, telling the bat instantly how the air is moving over the wing.
So it can make micro adjustments on the fly.
Literally on the fly. Adjusting tension, curvature. It's an active control surface, far more sophisticated than, say, a flying squirrel's membrane or even a bird's wing in some respects.
Okay, so they're agile, they have sensory feedback, but flight is incredibly energy intensive. How do they manage the cost?
Ah, yes, the energy savings. This is clever. It's about the upstroke. When they bring their wings up, they don't keep them fully extended like a bird often does.
What do they do instead?
They fold them inwards, tucking them close to their body.
Reducing the effort needed to lift the wing back up.
Precisely. It drastically reduces the inertia, the mass they have to move against gravity on that upstroke. Estimates suggest this saves around 35% of the energy for that part of the wing beat.
35%. That's a significant saving. No wonder they've been so successful.
It's a key factor. Makes powered flight much more sustainable.
Okay, that covers the how of flight. But what about the origin? The big evolutionary question. Did they start leaping from trees or running along the ground?
The evidence points quite strongly towards the trees down hypothesis, an arboreal ancestor that started by gliding.
Gliding first, then powered flight.
Seems likely. And this is important because it suggests flight evolved before the really sophisticated echolocation we see in many bats today.
And the fossil record backs this up.
Yes, the key piece of evidence is a fossil called Onychonectarus finii, found in Wyoming. It dates back about 52 million years, Eocene period.
Onychonectarus. What was special about it?
It was beautifully preserved, the oldest complete skeleton. And it showed this mix of features. It had claws on all 5 fingers. Modern bats usually just have one on the thumb.
Okay, a primitive trait.
Right. And critically, its hind legs were longer, and its wings were shorter and broader compared to modern bats.
Shorter, broader wings, meaning less efficient for continuous flight.
That's the interpretation. It suggests Onychonectarus wasn't a powerful, sustained flyer. It probably used gravity, maybe alternating short flapping bursts with glides. It could flutter, but maybe not commute long distances purely by flapping.
So using height, gliding down.
Yeah.
That fits the trees down idea. Flight first, sonar later.
Exactly. It likely relied more on vision initially, navigating from heights, and then later developed that incredibly precise echolocation for hunting in total darkness.
Speaking of echolocation, that actually leads to a major shakeup in how we classify bats, doesn't it? The old megabat versus microbat idea is kind of obsolete now.
It really is. That was based on simple observation, big fruit bats versus small insect-eating bats, basically. But genetics, molecular data, tells a very different story.
What does the DNA say?
It forced a complete reorganization. We now divide bats into 2 new suborders, Yimterochoroptera and Yangochoroptera.
Yin and yang bats.
Kind of. And here's the kicker for you. The traditional megabats, the Pteropodidae family, the big fruit bats that mostly don't use laryngeal echolocation, they are now placed firmly within the Yimterochoroptera group.
Wait, so the non-echolocating big bats are genetically grouped with some families of echolocating microbats?
That's right. They share a closer ancestry with some echolocators than those echolocators do with the other big group, the Yangochoroptera.
Okay, my head hurts slightly.
Yeah.
What does that imply about how echolocation evolved? Did it appear multiple times or appear once and then get lost?
That's the million-dollar question. And honestly, the jury is still out. It presents 2 really complex scenarios. Scenario 1, complex laryngeal echolocation, the kind made in the voice box, evolved independently twice. Once in the ancestor of Yangochoroptera, and separately in the rhinolophoids within Yimterochoroptera.
Evolving something that complex twice seems unlikely, doesn't it?
It does stretch credulity a bit. The alternative, scenario 2, is that laryngeal echolocation evolved just once in the common ancestor of all bats.
Okay.
But then it was lost in the lineage leading to the Chiropodidae, the megabats, maybe as they specialized in fruit eating and relied more on vision and smell.
Lost, but maybe not entirely.
Yeah.
You mentioned some megabats still use clicks.
Exactly. Some megabats, like the genus Rosetus, use a simpler form of echolocation, making clicks with their tongue, not their larynx, mainly for navigating in dark caves. This could be a remnant or maybe something re-evolved. It's complicated.
So evidence for both sides.
Pretty much. Studies on hearing-related genes, like Preston, sometimes support the evolve twice idea, but looking at the physical structure of the inner ear, the cochlea, suggests a common origin.
Fascinating. So flight definitely evolved once.
Right.
Echolocation, much more complex.
A much twistier evolutionary path for their amazing sonic senses.
Which brings us squarely into those sensory superpowers. For most bats, the microbats, echolocation isn't just a sense, it's how they construct reality in the dark.
It absolutely defines their world. They're essentially painting a picture with sound waves. They send out these incredibly sophisticated ultrasonic pulses.
Ultrasonic meaning way above human hearing.
Way above. These sounds are produced in the larynx, the voice box, and emitted either through the open mouth or, in some species, through really elaborate structures on their faces called nose leaves.
Nose leaves, like little satellite dishes for sound.
That's a great analogy. They help focus and shape the outgoing sound beam, giving them more control over where they're looking with sound.
And these calls are loud, right? Really loud.
Unbelievably loud at the source. We're talking potentially over 140 decibels for some species.
140 decibels. That's like a jet engine taking off nearby. How do they not deafen themselves?
They have protective mechanisms. Tiny muscles in their middle ear, the stapedius muscle, contract just milliseconds before they emit a pulse. It physically dampens their own hearing sensitivity for a fraction of a second.
Okay, clever trick.
Okay.
But how do they pick out the faint echo returning from, say, a tiny moth against the noise of their own outgoing shout?
That comes down to incredibly precise timing and frequency analysis. There are two main strategies bats use.
Right. Low-duty and high-duty cycle.
Exactly. Low-duty cycle echolocators emit a very short pulse. Then they listen in the silence for the echo to return before they send out the next pulse.
All listen, call listen. Simple alternation.
Relatively simple, yes, based on time separation. It works well, but the information isn't continuous.
Okay, then there's high-duty cycle. This one sounds more complex.
It is significantly more complex and really elegant. High-duty cycle bats emit a much longer, continuous pulse. They don't rely on silence between call and echo.
So how do they separate the outgoing sound from the incoming echo if they're happening at the same time?
They use frequency, specifically the Doppler effect. Because the bat is moving and the prey might be moving, the frequency of the returning echo is shifted slightly compared to the emitted pulse.
Ah, the same effect that makes an ambulance siren change pitch as it passes you.
Precisely that. This frequency shift tells the bat a huge amount about the target's velocity and relative position in real time.
But doesn't the bat's own movement also cause a Doppler shift in the echo it receives? How does it account for that?
This is the genius part. They perform what's called Doppler shift compensation. As the bat flies faster towards a target, the echo frequency naturally gets higher. To counteract this, the bat actively lowers the frequency of its emitted pulse.
It adjusts its voice on the fly.
Exactly. It adjusts its outgoing call frequency so that the returning echo, after being Doppler shifted by the bat's own motion, always falls within a very narrow frequency band where the bat's hearing is exquisitely sensitive.
Wow. It's like they're constantly tuning their broadcast to keep the reception crystal clear on their most sensitive channel.
That's a perfect way to put it. It's dynamic, real-time signal processing of the highest order, biological sonar at its peak.
Which, of course, leads to an evolutionary arms race. Prey aren't just sitting ducks, or sitting moths in this case.
Absolutely not. Many insects, especially moths, have evolved countermeasures. Tiger moths are the classic example.
What do they do?
Well, first, many moths have evolved simple ears, tympanal organs that can detect the bat's ultrasonic clicks. When they hear a bat coming, some just take evasive action, like power dives or erratic spirals.
Trying to shake them off.
Right. But others go on the offensive, acoustically speaking. Some tiger moths produce their own ultrasonic clicks.
Clicks back at the bat.
Two main reasons. One is an acoustic warning aposematism. The clicks basically say, hey, I taste disgusting, don't bother eating me. Bats can learn to associate the clicks with a bad meal.
Okay, a warning signal. What's the other reason?
Jamming. Some moths produce rapid, complex bursts of clicks specifically designed to interfere with the bat's echolocation signal. It creates acoustic clutter, making it harder for the bat to precisely locate the moth.
Acoustic warfare in the night sky. Incredible. Now, let's bust that myth. Bats are not blind.
Not even close. It's one of the biggest misconceptions. No bat species is truly blind.
So microbats, the echolocating ones, they still use their eyes.
Definitely. Echolocation is fantastic for close-range hunting and navigating complex environments, but vision is crucial for long-distance orientation. Think commuting between the roost and feeding grounds miles away. They primarily have what's called mesopic vision.
Mesopic, meaning
Their eyes are adapted for low-light conditions. They see best at twilight, dawn, or on moonlit nights. Not great in bright daylight, but excellent when light is scarce.
And the megabats, the big fruit bats that generally don't echolocate like the microbats do.
They have excellent eyesight, often comparable to or better than other nocturnal mammals. They need it to find ripe fruit in dense foliage, sometimes from a distance.
And they might even see colors we don't.
There's evidence for color vision in some, yes, helping them judge fruit ripeness. And some research suggests certain species can detect ultraviolet light.
UV light. Why would that be useful?
Many flowers and fruits have UV patterns specifically to attract pollinators or seed dispersers, including nocturnal ones like bats. So seeing UV could help them spot their next meal more easily.
Amazing. Okay, sight and sound covered. But bats have a couple more, even more usual sensory tricks up their wings.
Magnetism.
Yes, magnetoreception.
Yeah.
Like birds, many microbats can sense the Earth's magnetic field. They seem to use it as a compass, primarily for long-distance navigation during migration.
How does it work? Do we know? The leading theory is that they use a polarity compass. They can distinguish north from south, helping them maintain a consistent bearing, especially when visual landmarks are absent during night flights or over large bodies of water.
An internal compass. And the final sense, this one's unique to just one type of bat, right? Infrared.
That's right. Reserved for the vampire bat, specifically the common vampire bat, Desmodus rotundus.
How do they sense heat?
They have specialized pit organs near their nose, packed with heat-sensitive nerve endings connected to the trigeminal nerve. They function like thermal receptors.
Not just detecting warmth, but actually seeing heat differences.
Exactly. They can detect temperature differences of just a few degrees. This allows them to scan the skin of their sleeping prey, usually cattle or other large mammals, and pinpoint the exact location of superficial blood vessels where the blood is flowing closest to the surface.
A heat map guiding them to the perfect spot to bite. That's chillingly effective.
It's an incredibly precise targeting system for finding their very specific food source.
And that diverse sensory toolkit allows bats to exploit just about every food source imaginable. Their dietary range is as vast as their species diversity.
It really is. They've specialized incredibly. The majority, especially in places like North America and Europe, are insectivores. They are the night shift for pest control.
And they eat a lot of insects.
An astonishing amount. Because flight is so energy hungry, an insectivorous bat might eat over 100%, maybe even 120% of its own body weight in insects every single night.
Wow. What kind of insects?
All sorts. Moths, beetles, flies, and importantly, mosquitoes. They play a significant role in keeping mosquito populations in check, which has knock-on effects for disease transmission. Some even eat things like spiders or scorpions off the ground.
This insect consumption isn't just ecologically important, it's economically valuable too, right? Especially for farming.
Hugely valuable. The estimates vary, naturally, because it's hard to pin down exact numbers across a whole continent. But the consensus is that bats save the U.S. agricultural industry billions of dollars every year.
Billions.
By eating crop pests, things like corn earworm moths, cucumber beetles, cotton bollworms. Fewer pests mean less crop damage and, crucially, less need for farmers to spend money on chemical pesticides.
So direct pest reduction and reduced pesticide costs, what kind of figures are we talking?
The estimates range widely from maybe $3.7 billion on the conservative end up to potentially over $50 billion per year. Even the low end is a massive contribution. They are providing essential ecosystem services for free. Oh, and their droppings, guano, are also mined as a rich fertilizer.
Right, guano. So insectivores are key.
Right.
But then you have the plant specialists.
Yes, the frugivores, fruit eaters, and nectarivores, nectar drinkers. They are vital pollinators and seed dispersers, particularly in tropical and desert ecosystems.
How many plants rely on them?
Estimates around 500 different species of flowering plants depend on bats for pollination. This includes things we eat like bananas, mangoes, durian, and also agave, the plant used to make tequila.
So next time you have a margarita, think of bat.
You absolutely should. These plants often have specific adaptations. Pale flowers that open at night, strong scents, robust structures to support a perching bat.
And some nectar-feeding bats have equally amazing adaptations. That tube-lipped nectar bat. Tell us about its tongue.
Anura fistulata. It's legendary.
Yeah.
It holds the record for the longest tongue relative to body size of any mammal.
How long are we talking?
The tongue itself can be about 8.5 centimeters long. That's 1.5 times its entire body length.
1.5 times. Where does it even keep it?
It can't fit coiled up just in the mouth or throat. When retracted, the base of the tongue, the mechanism, actually extends down inside its rib cage, near the heart and lungs.
It stores its tongue in its chest cavity.
Essentially, yes. This incredible setup allows it to reach nectar deep inside specific long-tubed flowers, particularly Centropogon nigri, that other animals can't access. It's a perfect example of coevolution.
That is absolutely wild. Okay, insects, fruit, nectar, but some bats are hunters, right? Eating vertebrates.
Yes, there are specialists there, too. The greater bulldog bat, for example, hunts fish.
Fish? How?
It flies low over water using echolocation to detect tiny ripples made by fish near the surface. Then it uses its large, sharp-clawed feet to gaff the fish out of the water.
Wow. And others hunt frogs.
Indeed. The fringe-lipped bat is famous for listening to frog mating calls. It can distinguish the calls of poisonous frogs from edible ones, and even tell different species apart just by their calls, and swoops down to grab its preferred meal.
Learning the local frog singles scene?
Pretty much. And some larger bats, like the spectral bat in the neotropics, are top predators, hunting birds, rodents, and even other smaller bat species.
A diverse menu. Which brings us inevitably to the most specialized feeders of all, the vampires.
The hematophagus bats. There are only 3 species out of over 1,500 that feed exclusively on blood. The common vampire bat is the best known.
And they have a whole suite of adaptations for this unique diet. How do they even approach their prey, which is usually much larger and asleep?
They're surprisingly agile on the ground. They often land near their sleeping prey, like cattle, and then approach stealthily on foot. They use their thumbs and folded wings, almost like front legs, to walk, or even bound forward quite quickly and quietly.
Okay, so they get close. Then what? How do they make the incision?
They have heat sensors, as we mentioned, to find a good spot with blood flow near the surface. Then they use their incredibly sharp, blade-like upper incisor teeth. These teeth actually lack enamel on the cutting edge, which helps them stay razor sharp through wear. They make a very small, precise slice, almost like a shaving cut, not a puncture.
Designed not to wake the host.
Exactly. And then comes the saliva. It's loaded with chemicals.
Anticoagulants?
Potent anticoagulants, yes. The most famous is called Draculin. This keeps the blood flowing freely from the small wound. They don't suck the blood, by the way.
You don't. How do they drink it then?
They lap it up. Their tongue has grooves on the underside that use capillary action to draw the blood into their mouth quite efficiently.
And their insides must be pretty specialized, too.
Absolutely. Their digestive system is adapted to rapidly process the protein and, crucially, excrete the water quickly. They often start urinating within minutes of feeding, sometimes while still attached, to shed weight so they can fly away. And uniquely among vertebrates, they lack the enzyme maltase because their diet has virtually no carbohydrates.
A truly extreme specialization. Now, this amazing ecological diversity, especially the insectivores, is facing a huge threat, certainly in North America. White nose syndrome.
It's an ecological catastrophe. WNS is caused by a fungus, Pseudogymnoascus destructans. And it's devastating hibernating bats.
It's a cold-loving fungus, right? So it thrives in the caves where bats hibernate.
Precisely. It grows on their exposed skin muzzle, ears, wings, while they're in deep hibernation when their body temperature is low and their immune system is suppressed.
Does the fungus itself kill them directly?
Not usually. The main problem is that the fungal growth irritates them. It causes them to wake up from hibernation far more often than they should.
And waking up burns energy.
Burns a lot of energy. Hibernation is all about conserving stored fat reserves to survive the winter when there's no food. Each time a bat wakes up, it uses up a significant chunk of those reserves.
So they wake up too often, run out of fat,
and they starve to death before spring arrives, or they become dehydrated, or they might fly out of the cave in desperation midwinter trying to find insects that aren't there, and freeze or starve.
The impact has been massive, hasn't it?
Horrific. Since it was first found in New York around 2006, it's spread across much of North America. In some caves, for some species like the little brown bat, the mortality rate has been over 90%, sometimes hitting 99%.
And 99%?
Millions upon millions of bats killed. It's completely restructured bat populations in eastern North America and is continuing to spread west. The long-term ecological consequences, especially for insect control, are really worrying.
Moving from ecology to their individual lives. Bats are outliers again when it comes to lifespan. For their size, they live an incredibly long time.
It's one of the great paradoxes of mammalian biology. Small mammals typically have very short lifespans. Think of a mouse living maybe 2-3 years max.
Right, fast metabolism, live fast, die young.
Exactly. But bats completely break that rule. On average, they live about 3.5 times longer than other mammals of a similar size.
3.5 times longer. And what's the record?
The known record is held by a species called Brandt's bat, Myotis brandti, or possibly a closely related Siberian species. Myotis sibiricus, or some taxonomic debate. One individual was recaptured in the wild an astonishing 41 years after it was first banded.
41 years. For an animal that weighs just a few grams, that's ancient.
It's the equivalent of a human living for centuries. It fundamentally challenges our understanding of the relationship between body size, metabolism, and aging.
So how do they do it? What's the mechanism behind this extreme longevity?
A major factor seems to be their ability to enter states of controlled metabolic slowdown, torpor, and hibernation. This is called heterothermy.
Heterothermy, variable body temperature.
Right. Instead of maintaining a constant high body temperature like most mammals, bats can let their temperature drop significantly, especially during hibernation.
How low can it go?
During deep hibernation in a cold cave, their body temperature can plummet to just above freezing, maybe 6 degrees Celsius, sometimes up to 30 C, depending on the roost. And alongside that temperature drop, their metabolic rate crashes.
Heart rate, breathing, everything slows right down.
Everything slows dramatically. Energy usage can drop by 50%, even up to 99% compared to their active state.
And the theory is this metabolic slowdown also slows down aging.
That's the leading hypothesis. Aging is linked to metabolic processes generating damage over time, oxidative stress, DNA damage, cellular wear and tear. By spending long periods in a near-suspended state with drastically reduced metabolism, bats essentially slow down that accumulation of damage.
They press pause on the aging process during hibernation.
In a way, yes. Less metabolic activity means less damage generated per unit of time, allowing them to live much longer overall compared to a similar-sized mammal that's running its engine hot all the time. This ability to cycle between intense activity, flight, and deep rest, torpor hibernation, seems key.
This incredible biological resilience, this longevity, ties into another complex aspect, their relationship with diseases. They live long, they fly far, they gather in huge numbers.
Oh.
Which makes them notable reservoirs for pathogens.
It does, and it's crucial we discuss this factually and without causing undue alarm. Bats are natural hosts for a remarkable diversity of viruses, including many that can potentially spill over into other mammals, including humans, zoonotic pathogens.
We're talking things like rabies, obviously, but also others that have made headlines.
Yes. Rabies is well known, but bats also host viruses like Nipah, Hendra, Marburg, possibly Ebola, and importantly, a wide array of coronaviruses. This includes viruses genetically related to the ones that caused SARS and MERS and the ancestor of SARS-CoV-2.
What is it about bats that makes them such effective, long-term hosts for these viruses?
It's a combination of factors we've touched on. Their ability to fly gives them high mobility and wide distribution, spreading viruses over large areas. Their longevity means they can harbor a virus for years, and their intense social behavior roosting in colonies that can number in the millions, like Bracken Cave in Texas.
20 million bats in one cave.
Exactly. That creates incredible opportunities for viruses to transmit easily and persist within the bat population.
But here's the really fascinating part, the critical nuance. While they carry all these viruses that can be deadly to other mammals, the bats themselves often seem completely unaffected.
That's the core puzzle and a major focus of research. Bats exhibit an extraordinary tolerance to viral infections. They can carry high viral loads without showing the severe symptoms or diseases that these same viruses cause in humans or other animals.
How is that possible? Do they just have superpowered immune systems?
It's more like a uniquely balanced immune system. The leading theory connects it back to the evolution of flight.
Flight again. How?
Powered flight is incredibly metabolically demanding. It generates a lot of heat and byproducts that can cause cellular stress and DNA damage, things that would normally trigger a strong inflammatory immune response.
Okay.
Bats seem to have evolved ways to constantly manage and dampen this potential inflammation caused by flight. They have pathways, like the esting pathway involved in detecting viral DNA, that seem to be constitutively on but tuned down, providing baseline antiviral defense without triggering damaging hyperinflammation.
So their immune system is always sort of alert because of flight stress, but also really good at not overreacting.
That seems to be the key. They tolerate the virus without mounting the kind of massive inflammatory response, the cytokine storm, that often causes the most severe damage in other infected mammals. Their flight adaptations inadvertently pre-adapted them to handle viral infections differently.
Understanding that immune tolerance could be revolutionary for human medicine.
Absolutely. If we can figure out how bats tolerate viruses without getting sick, it could lead to entirely new ways to treat viral diseases or inflammatory conditions in humans. They're not just victors, they're models of disease tolerance.
It really flips the script. Which brings us to how humans perceive bats culturally. It's incredibly polarized, isn't it?
Massively polarized. Bats occupy this weird space mammals that fly, active at night, emerging from caves or darkness. In Western cultures, that's often translated into negative symbolism.
Darkness, death, witchcraft. Vampires, obviously, thanks to Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Exactly. Fear of the unknown, association with night and shadowy things. Even some Native American traditions view them as trickster figures. It's predominantly negative or suspicious.
But turn to the East, and it's a completely different story.
Totally different. In China, bats are powerful symbols of good fortune and happiness. The word for bat, fu, sounds identical to the word for good fortune or blessings.
So seeing a bat is lucky.
Very lucky. Traditionally, images of 5 bats represent the 5 blessings: long life, wealth, health, love of virtue, and a peaceful death. They're overwhelmingly positive symbols.
And elsewhere.
In ancient Mayan culture, bats were associated with the underworld, but also seen as powerful intermediaries, guardians of caves, which were considered gateways to the realm of the gods. The Zapotec people had a bat god associated with corn and fertility. So this deep cultural duality exists: fear and pestilence versus luck, longevity and divinity. It says a lot about how we interpret the natural world. #outro.
Well, this has been an incredible journey through the world of Chiroptera, from their unique status as the only flying mammals.
Right down to the genetic switches like BMP that made that hand wing possible.
And their absolutely mind-bending sensory abilities, that high-duty cycle echolocation with Doppler shift compensation.
Or the infrared targeting of vampire bats and the acoustic jamming duels with moths. Just amazing adaptations.
We've seen their massive ecological significance both as vital insectivores saving agriculture billions,
and as crucial pollinators and seed dispersers, sometimes with bizarre adaptations like that chest-stored tongue.
while also confronting the devastating reality of threats like white nose syndrome.
A truly sobering conservation crisis.
And finally, diving into their strange life history, that incredible longevity defying their small size, likely linked to hibernation and metabolic control.
And their paradoxical role as reservoirs for potent viruses, yet possessing an immune system that tolerates these infections in ways we're only beginning to understand.
Which leads us to our final thought for you, our listener. Consider this. Bats are unique. They conquered flight, something no other mammal managed. They live extraordinarily long lives for their size, and they carry viruses that are lethal to us, yet they thrive.
So the question is, what evolutionary secrets are locked away in their unique physiology? How did the extreme demands of flight shape not only their wings, but their metabolism, their longevity, their very immune systems?
Could understanding the bat's blueprint for managing energy, resisting aging, and tolerating disease unlock revolutionary approaches in human medicine? Could the secrets to a longer, healthier life or fighting pandemics be hidden in the biology of this creature we so often misunderstand or even fear?
It's something profound to think about. This animal, often relegated to the shadows of our imagination, might hold keys to our own future health and understanding of life itself.
Definitely food for thought. We hope this deep dive has given you a new appreciation for the hidden world of bats.
Thanks for joining us.
Until next time. Okay, let's unpack this. History often points to certain moments that, well, they don't just mark the end of an era, they fundamentally create a new one. We are diving into one of the great catastrophes, really, of the classical world, the Siege of Jerusalem in 70 CE. This was the decisive, bloody culmination of the first Jewish revolt against the Roman Empire.
It really was a military operation that changed everything. Our mission today, I think, is to try and cut through maybe 2,000 years of theological reflection and myth and focus instead on the immediate brutal realities, the precision of the Roman military machine under Titus, the destruction of the Second Temple, and the, well, astonishing political and religious transformation that was immediately forced upon the survivors.
Yeah, and when you look at the timeline, the sheer agony of this event is just palpable. Our sources confirm this wasn't quick. It was a massive, grinding undertaking. How long exactly?
It lasted 4 months, 3 weeks, and 5 days, from mid-April, April 13th, right through to early September, September 8th, 70 CE.
Wow, 4.5 months. And that long period, it wasn't just constant warfare in the traditional sense, was it? It sounds like an escalating spiral of starvation and, crucially, internal collapse.
That's exactly right. And to really appreciate the level of devastation, you first have to understand what Rome was actually fighting for. Jerusalem by far the most famous city of the East.
Right. It was a thriving, renowned metropolis. And for the time, It was huge, covering about 450 acres.
Yeah, nearly twice the size of the modern Old City. It was the absolute spiritual and political epicenter of the Jewish world, especially, when it swelled with thousands upon thousands of pilgrims for festivals like Passover.
And it was built tough, built to withstand a long siege.
Absolutely. The city had significant natural defenses, protected by these deep ravines, the Kidron and Hinnom valleys.
Mhm.
And those natural defenses were heavily augmented by 3 separate rings of massive fortification walls.
3 walls. And we know the third wall, the outermost one, that was completed sort of in a desperate rush right as the revolt began.
Exactly. In haste is the phrase often used. Strategically, on paper, the city should have been able to endure a siege for years. It was incredibly well fortified.
Okay, so here is where we hit the core tragic insight of the event, I think. And it's a difficult truth. While the walls were strong, let's say, the will or the unity inside was broken, Rome arrived to find the city essentially tearing itself apart.
Right. They found it in the middle of a crippling internal civil war. It was destroying itself from within.
So Titus was handed a massive strategic advantage, really.
He was. Now, we have to be careful not to diminish the power and effectiveness of the Roman army, of course. But yes, this internal conflict was a gift to them. You had these 3 rival Jewish factions, led by John of Gischala, Simon Bar Giora, and Eleazar ben Simon, fighting intensely, viciously for control of the city.
And the most unbelievable part of this infighting, they destroyed the food.
They did. In the midst of this chaos, they deliberately destroyed the critical storehouses of grain, oil, wine, the very supplies they needed to survive a long siege.
It's almost unfathomable.
Yeah.
Destroying the very provisions that were their only ticket to survival.
It is a moment of profound self-sabotage. And it was compounded, tragically, by the fact that the population had swollen dramatically.
Right, the Passover pilgrims.
Exactly. Thousands of pilgrims and refugees from the surrounding areas had come into the city for the festival, and then they became trapped by the advancing Roman forces.
So, more mouths to feed, less food, and internal war. Titus must have known this.
Oh, certainly, and he used it. His force was immense. We're talking a minimum of 48,200 soldiers.
That's huge. What kind of units are we talking about?
Well, you had 4 full legions, the 5th Macedonica, the 10th Fretensis, the 15th Apollinaris, and the 12th Fulminata. Highly disciplined veteran troops. Plus auxiliary forces, and notably a strong force of Arabs, as Josephus puts it, who had their own long-standing antagonisms with the Judeans. This was an overwhelming, meticulously organized power designed to crush resistance utterly.
And their tactics weren't just about breaking walls, were they? Titus seems to have been a master of psychological warfare, too.
Very much so. He would stage these enormous synchronized parades. Imagine cavalry and infantry, all in polished armor, marching in perfect formation just outside the walls. It was a deliberate display, ensuring that everyone inside could see the sheer, inexhaustible might of Rome arrayed against them, designed to demoralize.
And then came the physical terror.
Yes. The cruelty that followed was horrifying, and it was calculated. It wasn't random violence. It had a purpose.
To break the defender's spirit.
Exactly. To terrorize them and punish anyone attempting to flee. Roman forces captured fugitives trying to escape the starvation and crucified them.
Crucified them. In view of the walls.
Yes, within clear sight of the defenders. Josephus claims the scale was staggering, sometimes over 500 crucifixions a day.
500 a day.
To the point where they actually ran out of wood for the crosses, and finding suitable trees became difficult around Jerusalem. It was methodical terror.
That strategic brutality outside. It must have mirrored the absolute desperation inside the walls, the famine you mentioned earlier.
It became almost unbearable to reconstruct from the accounts. As the grain ran out, prices soared to impossible levels. People were reduced to scavenging in sewers for scraps, eating leather, dung, anything.
And this is where that chilling story of Maria from Perea comes in.
Yes. It's recorded by Josephus, perhaps an extreme example, but it illustrates the depth of the horror. After her home and supplies were looted by the internal rebel factions, she reportedly, in desperation and madness, roasted and consumed her own infant son.
Oh my God.
And when rebels, drawn by the smell of cooking, burst in expecting to find hidden food, they found the half-eaten remains. Even they, the hardened fighters, were reportedly shocked and retreated, trembling.
It shows the total collapse of everything, societal norms, basic humanity.
A horrific illustration of the starvation's peak. All this suffering, this internal chaos and external pressure, it ultimately culminated militarily when the Romans finally breached and captured a key position, the Antonia fortress.
Right, the Antonio. Why was that specific fortress so pivotal?
Because capturing the Antonia fortress, which overlooked the Temple Mount, immediately shifted the Roman focus. It took them from fighting in the outer city areas directly onto the most sacred ground of all. It gave them the high ground and, critically, a direct staging area for the final assault on the temple itself.
And that leads us directly to the defining moment of the entire siege, maybe one of the defining moments of Western history, the destruction of the temple.
Yes. We even know the traditional date, the 9th or 10th of Av in the Jewish calendar, which falls in July or August. The accounts say a Roman soldier, against orders according to one source, hurled a burning piece of wood, a firebrand, into one of the temple's chambers. And it ignited the massive ancient structure.
Okay, but against orders. This is where we hit a major historical debate, isn't it? Was the fire accidental? Or was it intentional Roman policy?
This is one of the most significant questions for historians, and it's something for you, the listener, to really grapple with. Our primary source, Josephus, tells a fascinating, maybe convenient story.
Josephus, the Jewish historian who was there but later worked for the Romans.
Exactly. He claims Titus rushed to the scene, shouting orders to extinguish the fire. Josephus insists Titus wanted to preserve the magnificent structure, viewing it as a potential ornament of Roman rule. He presents the final destruction as an act of battlefield chaos, of insubordination by Roman troops driven by, greed for gold and simmering hatred for the Jewish religion.
But that account, it just doesn't quite sit right with many modern scholars, does it? I mean, if Titus was such a famously strict commander known for discipline, why would he suddenly lose control of thousands of his troops at the absolute climax of the campaign? It seems unlikely.
Precisely. Scholars strongly question Josephus on this. They point out, as you said, he was writing under the patronage of the Flavian dynasty, Titus's own family. He had a very strong motive to, let's say, sanitize the general's image, to absolve him of the deliberate destruction of such a famous holy site.
So what's the alternative view?
Well, other later Roman and Christian historians offer different perspectives. Sulpicius Severus, for instance, writing centuries later but possibly using earlier sources now lost to us, suggested Titus deliberately ordered the destruction.
Why? What would be the motive for deliberate destruction?
The argument Severus presents is that Titus believed that destroying the temple was necessary to eradicate the religions of both Jews and, interestingly, the early Christians, by eliminating their central foundational cultic site. Military necessity combined with ideological purpose.
So the thinking among many modern historians leans towards intentionality, or at least Titus accepting it as a necessary part of the conquest.
Yes, the consensus view now is that it was almost certainly intentional, or at minimum, ideologically motivated and accepted by Titus as a necessary military and political action. Remember, the temple wasn't just a place of worship. It functioned as the national treasury. It was the symbolic heart of the rebellion, the center of national identity. Eliminating it was a decisive psychological and ideological blow for Rome. It served their purpose.
And the immediate aftermath of the fire starting.
Chaos.
Utter chaos and catastrophe. Mass killings and looting immediately followed the breach. The Roman soldiers, enraged by the long siege and resistance, showed little mercy. We have these incredible specific details from the sources, like the sheer amount of gold and silver seized from the temple treasury and melted down in the fire was so immense
that it affected the economy nearby.
Exactly. It actually caused the gold standard in the province of Syria to depreciate by half because of the sudden influx of looted wealth. That gives you a sense of the scale.
Incredible. And the people inside. Priests who refused to surrender, who perhaps stayed praying on the Temple Mount, were hunted down and executed on the spot. It was brutal.
So with the temple, the symbolic heart, gone, Titus then turned his attention to the rest of the city.
He ordered its systematic leveling. His goal wasn't just conquest, it was erasure. He wanted to wipe this rebellious metropolis completely off the map to make an example of it.
Utterly ruthless. Did anything survive?
He was ruthless in this pursuit, yes. He ordered almost everything demolished, but he deliberately left 3 massive towers standing part of Herod the Great's palace fortress.
Which ones were those?
Phaesal, Hippicus, and Mariamne. Josephus tells us Titus left them specifically as a monument, a testament to Roman military prowess, to show future generations what kind of city Roman arms had conquered. And he also left a section of the western wall standing to protect the garrison he planned to leave behind, the Legio Exfratensis. But the rest flattened.
Josephus famously wrote that a future visitor would struggle to believe a city had ever even existed there.
He did. And what's truly fascinating and sobering is how completely the archaeological record backs up this account of systematic destruction. This isn't just ancient text, we have physical proof.
What kind of proof? What have archaeologists found?
Well, think about the massive stones from the Temple Mount's retaining walls, particularly the Western Wall area. Archaeologists have found huge carved stones lying exactly where they fell on the street below, pushed over by Roman siege engines 2,000 years ago. You can see them today.
Wow. Physical scars.
Physical scars. And they've excavated areas like the burnt house in what was the upper city, the wealthy district. They found layers of ash, everyday objects like kitchen tools, pottery, inkwells, and heartbreakingly, the skeletal arm of a young woman pinned under collapsed debris, likely killed while trying to escape the fire and destruction.
Just frozen in that moment of terror.
Exactly. And the stories of the final desperate survivors are literally embedded beneath our feet in Jerusalem. There's evidence of refugees hiding in the vast network of drainage channels beneath the paved streets, trying to escape the Roman soldiers rampaging above.
Hiding in sewers.
Yes, clogging the great Herodian urban sewer system in a final, desperate attempt to escape the purge. It's grim confirmation of the textual accounts.
So the fighting ends, the city is razed. But the war wasn't officially over for Rome until they celebrated back home, right? The triumph.
Correct. The war didn't just end with the last pockets of resistance being cleared. It culminated in a massive triumphalist spectacle back in Rome in 71 CE, the famous Flavian Triumph, celebrating the victory of Vespasian and his son Titus.
And this was pure imperial propaganda on a grand scale.
Absolutely. It was Rome's chance to showcase its absolute dominance, to justify the war, and to solidify the new Flavian dynasty's legitimacy. They paraded the most sacred spoils taken from the temple, the huge solid gold menorah, the table of showbread symbols, instantly recognizable throughout the empire, displayed before enormous crowds in Rome.
And captives, too.
Oh yes, 700 select Jewish captives, probably chosen for their physique or former status, were marched in chains. And the captured rebel leader, Simon Bar-Giora, was ritually strangled or thrown from the Tarpeian Rock during the procession, adhering to that brutal Roman tradition, the victorious general displaying his mastery over the enemy's life and death.
And this victory wasn't just celebrated with a parade, it was immortalized, wasn't it?
Yeah.
On stone and on coins.
It was. We have the famous Judea capta coinage issued extensively by the Flavians. These coins typically showed a mourning female figure representing Judea, seated beneath a palm tree, sometimes with a bound captive nearby. A very clear message. Judea is conquered, subjugated.
And there's a connection to a very famous Roman landmark.
Yes, and it's a powerful one. Our sources and economic logic suggest that the spoils of this war, the vast amounts of gold and silver looted from Jerusalem and the temple, were substantial enough to help finance the construction of the Colosseum in Rome.
So the foundation of Rome's greatest architectural marvel, the Flavian Amphitheater, was literally built, in part, with the wealth plundered from Jerusalem's destroyed spiritual heart.
That seems to be the case, a stark connection. And of course, the most enduring monument is the Arch of Titus, standing in the Roman Forum today.
Which famously depicts those very soldiers carrying the temple spoils.
Exactly. The inner reliefs show the triumphal procession, Roman soldiers carrying the menorah, the table of showbread, the very items paraded in 71 CE. It's a potent visual summary of Roman victory over Judea.
It's incredible visual evidence. But what strikes me is that while the physical city, the temple, the political entity were annihilated, something else happened. This destruction forced one of the most profound transformations in religious history.
That's the crucial outcome, isn't it? The physical destruction was almost total, but it paradoxically led to immense religious innovation and survival.
How so? What fundamentally changed?
Well, the destruction of the Second Temple meant the end, forever, of the sacrificial worship system that had been the absolute center of Jewish religious life for centuries. It also meant the end of the hereditary high priesthood based in Jerusalem. The entire structure of the religion had its core ripped out. Jewish identity had to adapt completely, or simply vanish.
And it adapted. This is the birth of Rabbinic Judaism as we know it.
This is the great intellectual and spiritual leap into Rabbinic Judaism, yes. The focus had to shift. It moved away from priests performing physical sacrifices in one specific sacred location to a decentralized, portable spiritual system centered on Torah study, communal prayer in synagogues wherever Jews lived, and critically ethical acts of loving kindness, gemilut chasadim.
And the story of Rabban Yohanan ben Zakkai is sort of the anchor for this transformation, right? The escape from the siege.
It's the foundational anecdote passed down through rabbinic tradition. It tells us he foresaw the destruction and, realizing physical resistance was futile, had his disciples smuggle him out of the besieged city in a coffin, pretending he was dead.
A risky move.
Extremely. He then made his way to the Roman camp. Some accounts say he even predicted Vespasian would become emperor and received permission to establish a new center for Jewish learning in Yavna on the coast.
Yavna became the new hub.
It became the crucial incubator for this new phase of Judaism, and Ben Zakkai's teachings defined the era. There's a famous exchange where his disciple, Rabbi Joshua, is distraught over the temple's destruction, lamenting, "Woe unto us! The place where the iniquities of Israel were atoned for is destroyed."
How could they achieve atonement without sacrifices?
Exactly the question. And Ben Zakkai's response was revolutionary. He comforted Rabbi Joshua, saying, "My son, do not grieve. We have another atonement as effective as this. And what is it? It is acts of loving kindness." The physical temple was gone, but the means of connecting with the divine, of repairing the world, had to be internalized and made accessible everywhere through study and ethical living.
So the rabbinic leaders, reflecting on this catastrophe later, they had to find a theological explanation, didn't they? Why would God allow Rome to conquer his holy city and destroy his temple?
Absolutely. They couldn't simply blame the overwhelming external power of Rome, theologically speaking. They had to look inward. It was a necessary process for spiritual survival.
And their conclusion?
Their conclusion, repeated throughout rabbinic literature, was profound and self-reflective. The destruction wasn't ultimately due to Roman might, but due to the internal sins of the Jewish people themselves. Specifically, baseless hatred, sinat anam.
Baseless hatred, that internal factionalism we talked about earlier.
Precisely. That self-destructive infighting. It wasn't just a historical factor. It became the core theological explanation. It was a way to understand the trauma through internal failure, suggesting that if they corrected that internal flaw, redemption could come. The Talmud famously illustrates this with the story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, a tale of a petty social snub at a banquet escalating through pride and resentment, ultimately leading, in the story's logic, to the Romans being invited in and the temple's destruction. It's a parable about self-inflicted wounds born of hatred.
Wow. Meanwhile, what about the emerging Christian movement? How do they interpret the fall of Jerusalem?
For early Christians, the destruction was interpreted very differently. They saw it largely as the fulfillment of prophecies attributed to Jesus, predicting the temple's downfall. It was also often viewed as divine punishment against the Jewish authorities who rejected Jesus, marking a clear and final theological separation, a parting of the ways between nascent Christianity and the Judaism that was now being reshaped at Yavna.
So if we try to connect all these threads, pull it together. The physical manifestation of Jewish sovereignty, the city, the temple, it was utterly destroyed. But the identity itself, it didn't die. It survived by transforming, becoming a religion focused intensely on memory, text, and practice, adaptable to life outside the land, outside the temple walls.
That's the essential paradox and the enduring legacy. Annihilation led to adaptation and survival through radical transformation.
And the echoes of 70 CE, they're not just historical footnotes, they resonate powerfully even today, don't they?
Everywhere in Jewish life. The destruction is still mourned annually on the fast day of Tisha B'Av, the traditional date of the calamity. It's recalled symbolically even at moments of greatest joy, like when a glass is broken under the canopy at Jewish weddings, a deliberate act to remember the destruction of Jerusalem even amidst celebration. And of course, the centuries-long declaration, next year in Jerusalem.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, maybe a final provocative thought for our listeners to contemplate.
All right, try this. I consider the Arch of Titus again, standing there in Rome. It was constructed by the Flavian emperors, as we said, to celebrate the violent crushing of Jewish independence, the eradication of their central cultic practice, a monument to Roman dominance.
Right, the ultimate symbol of defeat for Judea.
Yet today, the most prominent image carved into that Roman triumphal arch, the menorah, being carried away as loot, has become the powerful, universally recognized emblem of the restored modern state of Israel.
That's quite the reversal.
Isn't it?
Oh.
It suggests a profound historical irony. While empires like Rome rise and inevitably crumble, certain spiritual anchors, certain symbols of identity and hope can endure. They can even outlast the very monuments built to celebrate their destruction, taking on entirely new meanings across millennia. Something to think about.
A profound contradiction indeed, captured in stone. This was truly a world-changing event with echoes that continue to shape our present. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the Siege of Jerusalem, 70 CE.
Today, we're really tearing through the source material on one of history's great self-made legends, Harry Houdini. Born Eric Weiss, Budapest, 1874. His name just became, a synonym for impossible survival.
Right. But when you dig into the archives, he wasn't just a magician. He was this expert in, well, manufacturing myth. A relentless entrepreneur, too.
Mm-hmm.
And fascinatingly, a man obsessed with proving that everything that looked supernatural was actually just supreme skill.
That's the real story we're getting into, isn't it?
Exactly. We're looking beyond the chains and the straitjackets, trying to understand the strategic genius behind it all. Our mission here is really to analyze that transformation. How did this relatively struggling young card artist become this global figure, the guy challenging police forces, even dictators?
And it's such a brilliant transformation when you look at it. He started small, didn't he? Focused on traditional card tricks.
Yeah, billed himself as the king of cards early on.
Right. And the name itself, that's part of the genius. He looked back at Jean-Eugène Robert Houdin, the famous French magician.
Added an I to honor him.
And took Harry, probably from his childhood nickname Airy, maybe also nodding to Harry Keller, the American magician. It was a whole professional rebranding.
Totally. A rebranding really born out of necessity, you could say. The sources, they describe his early days as, well, pretty tough.
Performing in dime museums, sideshows.
Yeah, for what the records basically call near-starvation wages.
Yeah.
He wasn't really getting anywhere fast. Not until 1899 when he met his manager, Martin Beck.
Ah, Beck. He gave him the golden ticket, right? Saw the potential in that handcuff routine Houdini was developing.
Exactly. Beck told him, essentially, drop everything else. Stop with the standard magic tricks.
Focus purely on escapes. Defying authority. Make that the brand.
Precisely. And that single focus, well, it launched him almost immediately. The key was that European tour starting in 1900.
Going city to city, challenging the local police. Try and hold me.
That was the hook. And the success was instant, especially in London. His salary shot up to $300 a week there.
Okay, let's pause on that. $300 a week back then. To give you a sense of scale, that's like, what? $11,339 a week in today's money, roughly.
Incredible, isn't it? He went from near starvation wages, as we said, to this massive global paycheck, almost overnight.
Just based on that single change of focus. Wow.
And it wasn't just about the money, it was the need for constant escalation. The spectacle had to keep growing, keep matching the hype, the monetization of defiance.
Which leads us straight to that big one, the challenge that really cemented his fame. The Daily Mirror Challenge, 1904.
Oh, yeah. This was pure theater, but on a grand scale.
The challenge was to escape these special custom-made handcuffs. A locksmith supposedly worked on them for, 5 years?
Yeah, that was the story, yes. And they staged it in front of 4,000 spectators, over 100 journalists watching. Huge pressure.
And he was a master of suspense, wasn't he? He dragged it out.
For an hour and 10 minutes. An astounding amount of time. He even came out at one point really dramatically.
Held a knife in his teeth.
Yeah. To cut his coat off because the mirror guy wouldn't let him remove it. Feared he'd see the lock mechanism or something.
But, okay, the deeper dive here reveals some nuance, doesn't it? Modern biographers kind of suggest that because they were custom cuffs?
The whole thing might have been a bit arranged. Showmanship.
Possibly. I mean, the struggle itself was the real product, maybe not the lock itself. But if it was arranged, why drag it out for 70 minutes? Wasn't he risking people thinking, okay, this is fake?
Well, that's Houdini's psychological brilliance, I think. He knew the audience needed to believe he was genuinely struggling against impossible odds.
Right. A quick escape would seem too easy, too simple.
Exactly. 70 minutes. That suggests death is knocking at the door. The myth demanded that maximum effort, that perceived danger. And he wasn't shy about the methods, was he? He laid them out in Handcuff Secrets in 1909.
This is the crucial how-to insight for you listening, the technical manual behind the myth. So what did he actually detail in Handcuff Secrets?
Well, he broke it down. Very physical stuff. He explained that, a lot of common locks could just be opened with properly applied force. Brute strength, basically.
Okay, but the more complex ones.
For those, he used concealed lockpicks, specialized keys, sometimes even common things cleverly hidden, like a shoestring.
But where did he keep them? I mean, you're often stripped down, searched before these stunts.
Master of misdirection.
Yeah.
And bodily concealment. The lockpicks were often tiny, flexible bits of metal, hidden in elaborate ways.
Like where?
Sewn into coat hems, tucked into his thick hair, apparently even taped deep inside his nostrils or throat, which he'd then retrieve later using muscle control or like a specific cough.
Wow. Okay. And what about the rope escapes? Straitjackets?
That was more about brute force, disguised as sort of supernatural elasticity. He'd take this massive deep breath, right? Expand his shoulders and chest to the absolute max, and they were strapping him in.
So when he exhaled.
Exactly. Give him just enough crucial slack to start working his arms free. It's physiology applied as showmanship.
That's fascinating. But, okay, the handcuff routine eventually became too successful, too easy for others to copy.
Pretty much. He consciously shifted away from it around 1908. Too many imitators, he felt. The escape act itself had lost some of its terror, its uniqueness.
So the next evolution had to be acts that were, well, inherently fatal if you failed. That would certainly cut down on the competition.
That was the idea. And that's where we get the truly iconic, really dangerous acts. First up, the milk can escape.
Right. Introduced in 1908. Describe that one.
Okay, so he's handcuffed, then sealed inside this oversized metal milk can, which is filled with water.
It filled right up.
Right up. Then they draw a curtain around him, hiding the actual struggle, forcing the audience just to imagine, well, the drowning death that the posters screamed about.
What was the tagline? Failure means?
Failure means a drowning death. Very dramatic. Very effective.
And then in 1912, he upped the ante again, introduced the granddaddy of them all, the Chinese water torture cell.
This became his signature act, really, his permanent feature. He's
Right.
locked in ankle stocks.
Upside down.
Lowered upside down into this glass and steel cabinet, completely filled with water. The audience could actually see his muffled, frantic struggle through the glass.
Terrifying to watch, I imagine.
Absolutely. And it was so important to him, he apparently never called it the Chinese water torture cell himself. He just referred to it technically as the upside down, or USD.
USD. Okay. And he performed that one right up until the end of his life.
He did. But he also knew the value of free publicity, public spectacle.
Now, which brings us to the suspended straitjacket escape. You see those iconic images of him hanging from a crane or off a skyscraper?
Pure marketing genius, hung high above the street, sometimes stopping all the traffic below. Instant, priceless press coverage.
Do we know how long those took?
Well, for one particular stunt, performed from the New York World Building, the sources actually note the specific time, 2 minutes and 37 seconds. Precision, even in that kind of chaos.
But the line between skilled performance and actual genuine risk,
Yeah.
it was thin. And sometimes he crossed it, didn't he? The buried alive stunt.
He attempted 3 variations of that one. And the 1915 attempt, near Santa Ana in California, that nearly killed him.
How so? What went wrong?
He was buried without a casket this time, just straight into the earth, 6 feet deep.
There's dirt on top of him.
Exactly. And the sheer weight of the earth started pressing down. He panicked, started screaming for help before his assistants could dig him out. He was unconscious when they pulled him free.
God, that's horrifying. Did he write about it?
He did. Recorded the terror in his diary, wrote something simple but chilling. The weight of the earth is killing. He knew he'd gone too far that time.
It's just hard to imagine this guy so obsessed with physical training, defying death, having time for anything else. But the sources show he had these other almost bizarre side interests, didn't he? Like aviation.
Yeah, he was a real technology enthusiast. His fascination with flight started around 1909. He actually bought a French Voisin biplane. Cost him $5,000.
Which was a fortune then. Did he just tinker with it?
No, he pursued it intensely. And here's the fact that really catches you off guard. He became the first person ever to make a controlled, powered flight in Australia.
Seriously, Houdini, the first pilot in Australia.
Yep. March 1910, at a place called Digger's Rest. Made 3 successful flights, got up to about 100 feet sometimes.
That's incredible. So he became a pioneer aviator.
And then, just as quickly, he was done with it, packed the plane away in storage, never flew it again, apparently.
Wow. Quick conquest, then move on. What was next? Hollywood.
Exactly. His film career was similarly brief but intense. He starred in some early serials, films like The Master Mystery, The Grim Game in 1919.
Right, I've heard of the Grim Game. Didn't he try to control the whole process too? Start his own company?
He did, founded the Houdini Picture Corporation, even started his own film processing lab called FDC, but the venture didn't really work out financially.
Too ambitious. Or bad timing.
Maybe a bit of both.
Mhm.
By 1923, he quit the movie business altogether, complained that, quote, the profits are too meager. Shows even the great Houdini could misread a market, I guess.
But what's really fascinating about the Grim Game, it was lost for ages, wasn't it?
Completely lost for 96 years, until a copy was discovered, fairly recently actually, by experts at the Scranton Houdini Museum. They sold it to Turner Classic Movies. So a literal escape from oblivion for his film work.
That's a great story. Okay, now we have to touch on a major controversy, one that really defined his later career in a way, his attack on his own idol.
Robert Houdin, the man he basically named himself after.
Yeah, what happened there?
Well, the relationship seems deeply conflicted. In 1908, Houdini published this book, The Unmasking of Robert Houdin.
Unmasking. Sounds aggressive.
It was a really scathing attack. Basically branded the French master a liar and a fraud. Claimed he stole many of the inventions he took credit for.
Whoa, that is heavy stuff. Especially in the magic community, which really values its history, its lineage. That must have caused enormous problems for Houdini.
Oh, absolutely. The book badly damaged his reputation, particularly in France. The French magic community saw Robert Houdin as their spiritual progenitor.
And they weren't happy about this American upstart attacking him.
Not at all. They rallied fiercely to defend Robert Houdin against what they saw as the American parvenu. It really highlights how competitive Houdini was, doesn't it? Not just in his acts, but willing to burn bridges, even rewrite history to secure his place as number one.
And this same fierce drive, this pursuit of truth, or maybe the exposure of lies that powered his final great crusade in the 1920s, right? Debunking spiritualists and mediums.
Exactly. He had the perfect skill set for it, didn't he? He knew exactly how misdirection worked, how all the trickery was done.
Because he did it himself, essentially.
Right. So he used that insider knowledge against fraudulent mediums.
Right.
Like Mina Crandon, who was famous as Marjorie. He wasn't just observing their seances. He was actively getting involved, exposing the methods behind their stagecraft.
And he took this public, didn't he? Didn't just write about it.
No, he made it a real campaign. He became president of the Society of American Magicians, SAM, and publicly offered a pretty significant cash prize.
For anyone who could actually demonstrate genuine supernatural abilities under controlled conditions.
And crucially, that prize was never collected. Not once. But this whole campaign, it created one of the most, remarkable intellectual clashes of the era. His deep rift with his friend, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
The creator of Sherlock Holmes, the absolute epitome of rational deduction. But he was a massive believer in spiritualism.
A huge enthusiast.
Yeah.
And Doyle simply refused to accept Houdini's exposés. He couldn't believe the mediums were frauds. Their conflict became quite epic, quite personal.
And Doyle came up with that really strange theory about Houdini himself, didn't he?
He did. A truly bizarre idea. Doyle proposed that Houdini was actually a powerful spiritualist medium himself.
And that he was using his own unique paranormal powers to deliberately block or suppress the powers of the mediums he was investigating.
Think about that. The ultimate debunker, accused by his friend of being the ultimate secret supernatural deceiver. It's incredible.
It just perfectly sets up the tragedy of his end, doesn't it? This man who spent his life taking calculated physical risks. In the end, it was a moment of, recklessness, chance, that brought him down.
It seems so. It happened in Montreal, October 22nd, 1926. He was backstage at the Princess Theater, reclining on a couch because he'd actually broken his ankle during a performance.
Right, already injured.
And this university student, Jocelyn Gordon Whitehead, came in with some others. Whitehead apparently asked Houdini if it was true he could withstand any blow to the stomach.
And Houdini, being Houdini, just said yes, didn't prepare.
Well, accounts differ slightly, but the most common version is that before Houdini could properly brace himself, tighten his abdominal muscles, Whitehead delivered these sudden, powerful punches. Witnesses called them hammer-like blows.
Oh, man. Straight to the abdomen while he was unprepared and reclining.
Exactly. He was clearly in pain immediately afterwards, but sort of brushed it off. Soon after, though, he developed what turned out to be acute appendicitis.
Did the doctors connect it to the punches?
The connection was debated, but the timing was suspicious. He performed that night, despite the pain. 2 days later, doctors urged him to have immediate surgery.
But he refused.
Stubbornly insisted on continuing. He performed his last ever show on October 24th in Detroit. By then, he had a fever of 104 degrees Afris, that's 40 degrees C.
Performing with a 104 fever and appendicitis? That's insane dedication, or something else.
He reportedly collapsed during that final show, but was revived and managed to finish. He finally agreed to surgery afterwards, but it was too late. He died a week later on Halloween, October 31st, 1926. Official cause was peritonitis from a ruptured appendix.
But the question always lingers, did those blows actually cause the rupture?
Medically, it remains inconclusive. Could it have aggravated a pre-existing condition? Possibly. Did it directly cause it? We don't know for sure. But
The insurance company had an opinion.
they did. They paid his wife, Bess, double indemnity based on the policy's accidental death clause, specifically citing the dressing room incident as the proximate cause. So, in their view, the blows were fatal.
What a life, and what an end. But his legacy, it goes way beyond just the stage performances, doesn't it? Into the archives.
Oh, absolutely. He was a formidable collector, a real bibliophile. His vast personal archives on the history of magic, spiritualism, theater, meticulously maintained. He bequeathed a huge portion of it to the Library of Congress.
So researchers can still access it today?
They can, and even his famous props, like the metal framework of the Chinese water torture cell, it actually survived a fire in a warehouse. It was eventually passed on to successors like David Copperfield. So his physical history endures too.
So if we step back and try to summarize, what's the central tension Houdini left us with?
For me, it's that duality. Here's the consummate showman, achieving global fame by appearing to defy the laws of nature.
Making people believe in the impossible.
Right, only to spend his final years vehemently proving that no one, not even himself, could actually possess supernatural powers. He mastered the illusion, then seemed desperate to destroy the very concept of the impossible he'd built his career on.
It's a fascinating contradiction.
It really is. And speaking of riddles, maybe consider the ultimate escape. He and his wife, Bess, they agreed on a secret code word, didn't they?
Rosabelle believe.
For communication after his death.
Exactly. Bess held seances every year on Halloween for a decade, hoping for that message. It never genuinely came through, though there were claims later that others might have compromised the code.
But the tradition continues, right? People still hold seances for Houdini.
They do, worldwide, every Halloween. Which brings us to maybe one final provocative question for you to mull over. Did the ultimate debunker somehow succeed in the ultimate secret escape?